Hello, dear colleagues. In our last video, we figured out the definition of a central relation. We have established that it is absolutely necessary for us to determine the ratio of the jaws and for the further prosthetics to patients who have an unfixed bite, since we have no way to get other guide lines. And now I would like to talk about the importance of the central relation for our future work and the construction of prosthetics. So we have a fairly large number of studies that show that the central relation is somewhat distal to the central occlusion. Therefore, not all patients could be and not all patients should be managed in the central relation. Not every work must have done in central relation. For example, if the patient's jaw is already displaced posterior, so that a distal bite, we can mount casts even more distally in the central relation, but how much will his profile be worsened? Will he be comfortable? By the way, you can try to relax, move your jaw a little in this way, so that you will have a primary contact when closing, and try to hold it in this position. You may be uncomfortable. Therefore, central relation is not always a therapeutic goal we are looking for and for which we will do prosthetics. So, why does it happen? The fact is that joint structures in different bite times form this type of relationship in different ways. That is the articular ratio, isn't it? You see in this case a normal joint, and in this case the bite tends to be distal, and we see that the distance for the bilaminar zone between the distal surface of the condyle is quite small. Therefore, if we make it even more distal, it could be not convenient for this patient. Poisson chart shows us that when opening there is an axis of pure rotation in which we register this ratio. And you see that there is a certain distance between the central relation and the central occlusion. This distance is called the long centric. I think that we will record one more video with a clinical example, which will allow us to demonstrate this technique and method of prosthetics with a long centric more clearly. So, a very important aspect: what is a central relation? Colleagues, if you think that the patient has come to you, has a joint pain, or has no teeth with full dentina, and you will immediately find him a central relation, I'm glad for you, but I want to warn you. The fact is, if the muscles are strained or there is additional dysfunctional problems, it is clear that we need the muscles to be relaxed. And in the last video, we highlighted that the low muscle activity is an important factor in determining the central relation. Therefore, when determining the CR, what do? We start to, I show it like shots, register it. And this leads to the fact that we find somewhere a certain zone. Please note, I outlined the central relation itself as a target, our main goal. Ideally, if this is a shot in the bull's eye, someone does it at once. If the patient is healthy, I highlight it in green. Then, even if, to say the least, you miss the definition of central relation, what has the patient done? Adapted. You remain in the zone of his adaptation. Therefore, here, of course, doctors often make mistakes, but a healthy joint and general system forgives it. Also, what should we understand? That the patient with our work will live and function for many years. Will the whole system compensate this problem for many years? Therefore, our task is what to do: to get as close as possible to that ideal position that exists and not to mess up, that is, to miss. Otherwise, the whole system may not withstand it. At the same time, if your patients have a joint dysfunction history, and such patients very often come across at your appointment, and that the majority healthy patients extremely rarely are treated as well, then the patient's adaptation zone is very narrowed. And pay attention, I've already said there are other relationships. They can be called the reference position, RP. So that RP1, that is, the patient came with some kind of problem. Here he has pain, something with a joint or just a toothache. If the tooth hurts, what does the patient do? He begins sort of to protect this zone. What have you done? You performed a dental treatment, made a splint, just talked with the patient, he calmed down, and next time during registration, the muscles will be more relaxed. Then you will find the RP2. That is, look, I'm getting closer to the adaptation zone of patient with dysfunction. And ideally, if you shot in the bullseye, so that initial position defined by you is already a working one in which you can conduct your treatment. Beside the RP, there is a central occlusion that you can use a position for the ratio of the jaws as well. Why not? If the patient comes to you, he has a good central occlusion, he has normal teeth, the joint doesn't hurt, so use it as a starting point for your further prosthetics, even if you have a total prosthetics. It can be a ranger position. It's a position when some transformations have already been undergone in the joint, a disc has dropped out or something else, a lot of problems, but you still need to start from something, and we begin to determine the ratio of the jaws even in such a neglected situation. Therapeutic position, what is it? The fact is that very often some confuse it with our therapeutic goal, to where we are going. The therapeutic goal and the therapeutic position is different things. The therapeutic position is related to that fact that a disc has dropped out in the joint, and when you move your jaw forward, this is called anterization, the disc slides back. Now, if you find a position in which the disc is set, then you have found a therapeutic position. Therefore, do not mistake. The fact is, they sometimes tell me that this clinging to terminology is not necessary, but colleagues, if you do not understand each other, for example, you understand the therapeutic position in your own way, me in my own way, and we argue until the tears and hoarseness about different things, it's wrong. Exactly, the unified terminology in medicine is very important, and only in this way we can understand each other, regardless of the knowledge of the language we speak. Therefore, once again, here the cornerstone of working with the jaw ratio is a clear understanding of the definition of this ratio. Next, colleagues, note the jaw itself got this position. You determine this ratio. And then you do the calculations. For example, I've already spoken and given an example of a distal bite when the patient's jaw is tend to be distal when the bilaminar area is very compressed. The profile is small, ugly. What do we need to do? Perhaps we need to move the jaw forward and to rise. You already started to think, or you see that in the forward position the disc is set, and if you are guided by the theory of Slavichuk, you work with the anterization of the lower jaw. But what is the essence of jaw ratio? That is, once again, the starting point from which you can plan treatment, diagnostics, and decide on the therapeutic goal that you want to solve. Thank you, dear colleagues, for your attention. If you have any questions, I'll be glad to answer them with pleasure in the next video. Subscribe, like, we are moving on. We will analyze the most interesting and urgent matter. Your feedback is always welcomed. I was glad to see you, albeit online. We are waiting for your questions. See you.